you know, it's now transpired that nearly towards the end of this pandemic period, you've like come upon Sea Sisters and things like that. So I'd love to know a little bit of like how the process and the transition from being a chef and understanding all of that kind of thing has now led you to the position of obviously starting Sea Sisters, which is England's first cannery, basically.
Yeah. So we, I guess, landed on the idea a long time ago when we were travelling in a transit van through Europe, pre-kids, eating baguettes and tinned fish and tomatoes from the market and not a lot else. And we were just loving how convenient it was, how beautiful the packaging was, how tasty it was. We loved the old-time aesthetic, and it's more than just food. It's like it's a product, and it resonates with everyone. Everyone's had tinned fish. We just thought, it'd be great just to be able to make a product like this and set up an actual cannery. And that was just a pipe dream back then, just an idea. You know, when you're doing these, you're traveling around and you're like, right, we're going to move here. We're going to rent a house for 6 months. You know, you're in the middle of like Barolo or something. And then another idea comes a week later. So that was like where sort of the seed was planted, I guess. And then I, you know, had children. I was working in kitchens. It was mad. Didn't know at the time, but look back and think, how did I get through some of those periods? Patience was born prematurely, like 6 weeks premature, back in July 2019, middle of like a heat wave, and I was like cycling to work and then going to the hospital because she was in an incubator, and then just like cracking on at work, and everyone's like asking me how Patience is. I'm like, yeah, she's fine, but actually when I look back, it's a crazy time where your daughter is like this little tiny totally not what she should look like in a little incubator, and I was just like cracking on. But anyway, I digress. That was a crazy time, and then another child turned up, and then I carried on working in kitchens, and the pandemic hit, and it was like this amazing break where we just stopped going into the restaurant, and we had Patience, who was 1.5, Clover was 3 months, and we were at home and we could just be in the garden, and we cherished it every minute. We loved it, best time of our lives probably. And then popped back into work for a few months between the lockdowns. I didn't mind going back in so much because I was seeing people I hadn't seen for a long time, and it was being part of that camaraderie again. And then I think Charlotte, it was the end of summer when she popped out into the garden. I was out with the girls, and she just shouted, babe, you've got to do this fucking canning idea. And I was like, like my idea is just like, my head was like racing. It's like, okay, like, you know, from that point, I was just like thinking about it, like, how do we approach this? How do we, just started typing in like fish canning, England, like fish cannery, like London, like, no, obviously not, and just kept on digging and sort of couldn't find anything. And then just like looking at how the Portuguese were doing it, and then the Americans are really into home canning, so you go down this like avenue of canning at home, and there's, you know, they love a bit of home canning, but they're also terrified of it at the same time. There's so many regulations. They're sort of feeding you all this information that is extremely prohibitive, and like they're very careful, which is fair enough. You know, that it is very dangerous
Because of like bacteria and stuff. Okay.
Clostridium botulinum is the kind of number one terror when it comes to home canning. Basically a bacteria that can exist without air and moisture and thrives in that environment with no acidity. So all these low acid foods, you're canning your vegetables at home, like your asparagus, and you haven't done it properly, it's danger zone, yeah. So I was like, fuck this, forever soldiers, really honest. I'm not doing fish, I'm not doing anything to do with canning. And then we'd like sort of have a break from reading up about it, and I'd spend nights just sort of like going down rabbit holes and convincing myself it was going to be alright, and then reading something else and be like, no. So we had this like few months of sort of looking into how we might go about doing it, and then we ended up just thinking, fuck it, let's just buy a piece of kit and trial it. So we managed to find this legend in Eastern Europe where they also do a lot of home canning, sorted us out with everything we needed, told me in very broken English like how I have to do it, It's involves like applying overpressure, and you've got to have the right amounts for what you're putting in there and the product and how dense the product is in the can. We had to sort of read this Russian manual where this piece of equipment was made with Google Translate, just like hovering over it, trying to like figure out what these guys were on about. It was
I love
ridiculous.
that.
And then being completely terrified of this autoclave that we bought during the first, I literally got it going and then just like got everyone out of the house. It was like, this thing is a bomb and I don't trust it.
What's an autoclave?
So autoclave is a sterilising unit. So yeah, canneries use autoclaves, also known as retorts, generally with steam, and they'll penetrate the can to kill all of the nasty bacteria in it. So that's how it works. But we bought this vessel from Russia, and it was a massive learning curve, and we spent a long time just absolutely mullering cans of fish and being like, that is disgusting. We're like, how are we ever going to get to a point of enjoying this fish? And just started like making something like overtly like strong in flavour, so try and mask the flavour of the can that we were like making. Anyway, I'm going into like lots of detail here, but it was you can picture a tiny, very tiny kitchen with two kids running around like naked, and me trying to like test lots of cans of fish and just like guts in the bin and like
And loads of pieces of
fish
paper
scales
and like,
paper and,
yeah, just everything.
Just like, while I was trying to like.
Is this
cook
can
some
1 or
lunch.
can 4?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Just like, yeah, combining lockdown life with a fish cannery and like newborn kids. It was a really interesting, fun time, and we sort of landed eventually a year later on some recipes that we were happy with, but we knew that this is as far as we could get them in terms of quality. So we started researching into working with expert thermal processors, and then we got these legends on board who took our products to the next level. Basically, we got them as far as we could. We were happy with, you know, the oils that I was making, the marinades, and then we put them through some serious kit that became a product that we were really proud of. Charlotte shed tears the first time she tried the fish that came out of their machine, and it was an exciting moment. That was like a real turning point for our business. It was like, fuck, we've got something here that we can actually shout about and tell people about. Now we just need a brand name. Let's start building the brand. We can do this. Like, this is a thing. So we spent the next few months building that brand, using them, trialing more recipes, and then things just like swiftly escalated towards Christmas, where we were like trying to get some cans out for Christmas so people can try them and get feedback basically.